Hello, welcome to episode 1 of Coffee Without Scott Adams. I'm James Duane, your host. Now, why would I do such a thing called Coffee Without Scott Adams? I intend to do two things with this in two different parts. The first part will simply be a summary of Scott Adams' daily periscope. And I'm going to try to stay as close as I can to the spirit and the intentions of Scott when he did the periscope. So I'll try to keep out my personal opinions in that part of it. In the second part, I will give my opinion of exactly how I differ with Scott. And we differ on quite a lot of things. I've been aware of Scott since before the year 2000, not only as the writer of Dilbert, but also as a person interested in how the human mind works. I read a book of his. I think I had it in about 1998. Anyway, Scott has been doing the country a great service, probably humanity a great service, by showing us his methods of prediction and persuasion. Now, part of what I don't like about Scott's, why this is necessary, is that first of all, Scott takes an hour to say about 5 or 6 different things generally. And I don't think, I think people who want to hear it more quickly can get it a lot more quickly. So I'm going to summarize it for that point. Now the second part is Scott works as a hypnotist. And to think that he's not working as a hypnotist when he's giving his periscope, you're just not paying attention. He's telling you all the time. He's telling you how it works. He's going to pace you and then lead you. He did it with Trump. He's doing it with climate change, global warming, whatever. He's going to do it, I hope, with other topics. And you'll see in my comments in part 2 where exactly I think he may be headed with one of his points. And I hope he makes it a larger focus of a bigger thing. So without too much more rambly ado, let's get started with installment number 1, Coffee Without Scott Adams, for March 7th, 2019. First, from 0 to a minute 12, greetings and the famous sip. Okay, at 1:12, the point is vaccinations. Scott gives a summary of his understanding of the anti-vaxxer point of view, to wit, hey, it's more about how, not the what. We accept vaccines, just let us spread the vaccines out more and we'll be fine with it. So that's Scott's summary of their position. But then Scott also talks about a persuasion filter and asserts that a lot of anti-vaxxer sentiment is due to a psychological phenomenon. Parents of children who experience an adverse medical event are likely to want to lay the blame somewhere, and vaccines are a convenient scapegoat on which to lay it. Now, my personal views on this topic are quite at variance with Scott's, so go to part 2 if you want my perspective, but it is not included here as this is merely a summary of Scott's comments. Okay, so I'm going to try and keep all my stuff separate. At 455.2, R. Kelly and Michael Jackson. These two men are both accused pedophiles, and Scott believes that in all likelihood they are. But he cautions, don't think you know something with 100% certainty. After all, look how I, Scott, got fooled in the Covington Catholic case. The R. Kelly case is worth following because we have yet to see what that man's lawyers could bring forth. At 8:46, we have point 3. Security clearances for Ivanka and Jared. Scott says this is a complete non-story. Why wouldn't Trump just be able to give them clearance without using the normal process? Doesn't he know his daughter? In Scott's view, this just shows how desperate the Democrats are to fling anything they can at Trump. Scott compares this case to the charge of Trump obstruction of justice in the Mueller probe and also to the Stormy Daniels campaign finance violation accusations. Scott concludes, if there are competent lawyers questioning whether the alleged actions are even crimes, as happened in both the Mueller case and the Stormy Daniels case, then nobody's going to jail. Bank on it. Point 4, no timestamp. We have Michael Caputo. In Scott's opinion, Michael Caputo is a patriotic hero for publicly refusing to provide documents to the Democrats in their efforts to ruin the country with their politically motivated investigations, which are nothing more than perjury traps. Harumph. At 1750, we have point 5. The White House is attempting to rebrand the border crisis as a humanitarian emergency that needs better border security to save immigrants from the crimes of traffic in human cargo, sexual assault, stash houses, and debt bondage. Scott says kudos to the White House for finally taking a position that acknowledges illegal immigrants as anything other than a criminal invasion. Crime Talk, or characterizing this as just a criminal invasion, worked for the election, but it's high time to dump that losing message. Now we have point 6, the longest point here. Ilhan Omar accused the Israel lobby of buying influence in Congress. Critics immediately accused Omar of anti-Semitism. Scott never addresses whether or not Omar is indeed anti-Semitic, but Scott loves the situation and Trump's response to it. In Scott's words, Nancy Pelosi was cornered into supporting a bill to condemn anti-Semitism, but then that bill was killed by House Democrats. This allowed Trump, in turn, to tweet that it was shameful that the Democrats were unwilling to condemn anti-Semitism. Scott laughs in this part. He describes as delicious seeing the Democrats being open to charges of anti-Semitism from Trump, especially after having cried foul for so long and so hard over Trump's fine people comment after the Charlottesville incident. You can tell Scott's really beside himself in this section as he twice stumbles into using gun imagery and then immediately apologizes. He feels that people like Kamala Harris, who in Scott's view willfully misinterpreted Trump's words and carried forward the Charlottesville hoax, he feels that Harris and others put Scott at personal physical risk. So he enjoys finally seeing them having to decide between eating their own or failing to condemn what Scott apparently takes to be anti-Semitism. Now, my opinion on this point also varies quite far from Scott's opinion. So go to part 2 for that. Scott then deconstructs Omar's claim about Congress's relationship to Israel. He gets into dictionary definitions, and I believe he's completely trying to brush it aside when there's quite a lot of serious things to say about a charge like anti-Semitism. And finally, point 7. Scott critiques Candace Owens and Hawk Newsom's suggestions for supporting struggling families. Owens says that the thing to do is encourage more fathers to stay in households. Scott expresses doubt whether that would be all to the good, and how would we go about measuring the effects. On the other hand, Hawk suggests supporting nutrition as an important lever for helping families. Scott is very much in favor of this approach, mainly because, at least he spends a lot of time on this, mainly because the effects of this intervention would be measurable. Wow. Okay, I don't know what the time was, but there you have it. Instead of 50 minutes of Scott Adams with all the mind control and pacing and leading, you get a summary which I hope was basically faithful, or you know, as much as I could be faithful to Scott's intentions and his tone. There you have it. Coffee without Scott Adams for March 7th, 2019. Please go to part 2 for my personal commentary, and I hope you come back for another coffee without Scott Adams.